Hello, and welcome back to this crazy COVID edition of Ciao Falmouth. It's been a long time since you've seen me on camera or heard what I've had to say. So let's roll the clock back and pick up where we left off. In the spring of 2020, I was prepared to sit here and tell you about how we were going to go forward with our stamp testing for proficiency, our World Language Award ceremony, student trips, world language graduation, and anything else that had to do with world language. And by the way, this is Ciao Falmouth. This is a program where we talk about anything and everything that has to do with world language in the community in Falmouth. So, Ciao Falmouth. But then, as we all know, the screen went blank. And we found ourselves in lockdown and remote and Zooming and everything else. So while we took the time to get on our feet, as the World Language Department Chair, my thoughts ran to, I need to really get up to speed with some professional development that would help my teachers teach in the remote virtual world. So by the time summer of 2020 came, teachers were involved in learning about Modern Teacher. We had Schoology training and various other curricular projects. Myself, got involved in the Massachusetts Foreign Language Association's classroom collaboratives. There were a series of 6 or 8 weekly segments. I did 2, one on relationship and community building as you head back into the instructional year for teachers, not, at least in March. Teachers knew their students. In September, they weren't going to know them at all. So it would take a considerable amount of time to build that trust and community and confidence in one another in order to have the instruction go forward. And the other was how to provide enough input in the interpersonal mode, which is the talking mode, for our students to be able to produce output, and how to produce that output if you're not in person. So that was, I'm glad I took part in all of that, and teachers have begun to use some of those thoughts and techniques. And while I'm talking about MAFLA, we also postponed the MAFLA 2020, which would have been this past weekend, to MAFLA 2021. However, those in the high school can go up to the bulletin board outside the World Language office and see student projects or posters and videos that have won in various different schools based on the theme of creating cross-cultural connections. Some of them, I had Jill Parker in the library print them in color so that they would really stand out. As we moved from summer of 2020 into the beginning of the school year, I mean, really, the theme is really PD. It's a lot of professional development and learning how to provide instruction in a totally different way. So we continued with trauma-sensitive training. We learned all about Edpuzzle and Pear Deck and Padlet and Kami. Ongoing Schoology training, and teachers, in service time, we've had a couple already, and we will continue in a couple of weeks with another one. And throughout the year, learning new techniques. We're going to continue with the interpersonal way of trying to get students to, talking that are not, currently in person in a classroom, how to do that. There are ways. through Zoom and Google Meets to have them, meet with the teacher. And I have heard some teachers even say that the students even prefer being in smaller groups. So, there's always a silver lining somewhere, just as, the COVID has put a considerable damper on how everyone does things. There are things that are surfacing that would not have otherwise. So, that said, and if I go back to MAFLA, they provide webinars on, a lot of techniques. We just had one on social justice. All the conferences, naturally, are online, but they're available for teachers to avail themselves of. And that seems to be the name of the game, and that's how we're going to maneuver our way through this the best we can. The next segment will feature 2 new teachers at Lawrence. One is a last year new French teacher, and the other is a current new French teacher. So I would like to interview them, get their thoughts on how their classrooms, how instruction is going, some things about their background, what they like, where they think their teaching is going to, how they'd like to, progress from now till the end of the year. So, that said, I think I'll close for now and pick up with Dan Perea-Kane and Kristen Mills. Today, we have the pleasure of having 2 guest teachers, both the new teachers at Lawrence Junior High, Kristen Mills and Dan Perea-Kane. Dan came to us last year to replace Ed Priest as a French teacher. So, hi, Dan. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your interest in French?
Okay, so my interest in French grew out of my family connection to France. My grandmother came over from France as an immigrant, and I took the language through school, through high school and college, and really fell in love with it, especially through reading literature. The Little Prince was my first big chapter book in French, but I was very smitten with it, and I kind of wanted to learn all of the vocabulary and the grammar and all of that went along with the book. But I struggled with the grammar early on in French, especially like French 1, the passé composé and imparfait, like different tenses. But as I kind of got more immersed in the language, both in the classroom and then in my reading and independent study, I found that having a passion for it and enjoying it really allowed me to comprehend the grammar a lot better, and things sort of fell into place over time. In college, I decided to be a French major, and I read extensively in theater, drama, poetry, and novels, and kind of enjoyed kind of learning more about the history of the language and going further back in terms of how French sounded 200 years ago, how it was written differently 400 years ago, and I think that kind of led into like a broader interest in linguistics, not and just becoming more of a general language guy. So that's kind of a brief overview of how I really developed an interest in French, and then I think with regards to teaching it, I wanted to share the passion and love that I had for the language with others.
Absolutely. I always was fascinated with the fact that Latin morphed into Old French, and then so its background is equally fascinating in terms of not just speaking the language, using the language, learning about the language, but the history and all the connection, everything that goes along with it. I couldn't agree with you more. Fascinating, way to approach that. Now you came to us from Brockton High School where you taught ESL. How did that happen? How did you not teach French? How did you end up in
Yeah.
the ESL
So,
world?
so I came to education through an alternative certification program, and there's a big need right now for ESL and special education teachers. So I was initially working in ESL and was working with mainly Latino American students and really trying to develop their English. A lot of them were newcomers, so as they were learning English, I was working on my Spanish and really trying to find ways um, to get them uh, the support they needed in learning the language through visuals, sentence frames, word banks, all kinds of supports that are put in place for language learners. And I think a lot of that translates to foreign language instruction, and especially this new proficiency-based approach where language immersion and uh, kind of really focusing on what communication over perfection in terms of grammar. That's kind of a lot of how ESL is taught, and students are encouraged to really develop as uh, develop without too much self-consciousness, because there's in learning any language, there's a lot of that initial um, kind of emotional barrier that you have when you don't want to make a mistake, you don't want to say things wrong. So I ended up enjoying teaching ESL, but feeling like I was still really drawn to French, and I wanted that to be part of my work and part of what I taught. So I set out and I found that Falmouth was a great fit, and there was kind of a similar philosophy of teaching and education to the one I had, and and I'm here.
Very good. No, I can attest to the fact that Dan even just walked into French classes last year and took right over in terms of his understanding of proficiency. He's right on because of the ESL back. I could tell right away. It, it it was a direct connection, and it was just a natural fit. That he had that background and his that background and his background in French and the love of French just translated in right into a super class, even with students who are in what we call our world languages and cultures class now. Um, so um, he did a great job, and he's doing a great job. Um, Let me ask you how your classes are this year and what teaching is like.
So teaching has been a lot different in some ways. I think there's something that teachers throughout the building and not just in foreign languages have struggled with, um, getting students to overcome their self-consciousness on Zoom in terms of speaking up and feeling like they can be part of the classroom. I think with this, half of the students are in person, so with them it's much easier to kind of um, to get participation and to be speaking the language. But then I think everyone's trying to kind of figure out how to make the hybrid model a little bit more student centered and less teacher centered. So um, but the big thing for a lot of, and this part, it's not so much about teacher centered, um, about being teacher centered as giving students the proper support. I think you can, there's a lot of input that needs to happen, and especially in seventh grade, which I'm teaching this year, when they're really just beginning their journey of learning the language. So just really giving them a lot of videos and little interpretive exercises and kind of opportunities to just share their own kind of little steps towards using the language. Not necessarily like they have to produce big things yet, but just getting them comfortable and confident by giving them like the language chunks they need to start expressing themselves.
No, that's very good. I agree with you. Um, I guess another question I have for you is, have you yet had a chance to get involved in Lawrence life? In other words, take on a club or get involved in some kind of, I'm not sure, I'm not sure of all the things that are offered to do down there as they are here at the high school, but.
Yeah, so there's not a lot in terms of extracurriculars offered this year, but last year I tried to get involved with some in Black History Month and in making my students more aware of Francophone connections in Africa and the Afro-Caribbean cultures, and really just get them to think about the kind of wider application of French or the wider uses of French throughout the world. And a lot of them were excited about like the World Cup team because they're big soccer fans, and just learning about that and how many of the players were from or who their families were from kind of these different countries, different backgrounds like Algeria or Cameroon or wherever. And so I tried to kind of make that a big focus last February. But I think this year was the year I was planning to get more involved, and hopefully there'll be some chances to do that at some point when things ease up a bit.
No, that's great. Even though I can't share them with you, the New World Language Standards have a lot to offer in the way of intercultural communication and cultural proficiency that you've just spoken to. So, I mean, there's also social justice and things like that in there, as well, but social and emotional learning. So it covers a wide range of, but sounds like you're perfectly equipped to be able to provide that culture base to students. So that's great. Anything else you'd like us to know?
Well, I would just say, like, even with everything going on, I think there's a lot of exciting work being done with foreign languages here, and we're really just trying to kind of at the junior high level build kids' excitement about the language, because a lot of them are excited when they come in, and you don't want to lose that excitement for learning a foreign language and just the creativity that kids have, and just build on that and make sure that they're prepared, but that they're also not starting to dread a subject that is really exciting.
No, teachers down at the Lawrence School do a fabulous job of getting students excited and interested in the study of a world language. So there's no worries there. It'll just happen organically. So, well, thank you very much. That was very informative, Dan. I learned some new things too. I remember in the interview you spoke about your passion for French, but it was entirely in French. So I was interested in your family background and hearing about that.
Oh yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll turn to Kristen, who is also a French teacher. Kristen Mills, brand new this year. And she and I have a connection, which is, how they talk about 6 degrees of freedom. Well, I, almost 2 years ago, had an occasion to have my left shoulder replaced due to arthritis, let's just say that. And my nurse practitioner was her mom. And so her mother explained that she was in Ghana as a junior and at Wheaton, and my ears perked up and I thought, ooh, I wonder if so I asked for contact information and was given it. And so Kristen came to talk to me about, I don't know, over a year ago, and ultimately ended up doing her observations here at the high school, our French teachers. And when I knew that there would be a position available, we alerted her to that. She applied, and here she is. So now I'd like to ask her the same kinds of things. I do know a little bit about her background in her passion for teaching French, but I'll let her explain. Kristen?
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction.
Oh, my pleasure.
So yeah, my interest in French started young. I grew up in Milton, Massachusetts, and in that school district, I went to Milton Public Schools. They had a French immersion program. I was so lucky to be able to be a part of this program from first grade all the way through 12th grade. And I kind of just fell in love with learning languages almost instantly. The idea that there were different sounds and accents were crazy, and everything about it was just so different, so new. And being able to talk to different people that I didn't know it at the time when I was just starting, but I'd be able to talk to people that I would never have otherwise been able to communicate with if I hadn't learned the language. So I started real young and was fortunate to have some amazing French teachers who really cultivated that that passion for the language, the passion for the culture. We did all sorts of things. I remember making crepes in second grade, and which is a lesson that I just did today with my kids. And we sang songs, and we read The Little Prince, as Dan was saying. We got to read The Little Prince. I read it in 5th grade, and very similar to how you described it, Dan. I fell in love with it just the same, and it's always been sort of a part of my repertoire now. It's one of the first lessons that I taught when I was doing my practicum for college. I taught The Little Prince to sophomores in high school, and I've just always really enjoyed the communication aspect of the language. I will say that I also struggled with grammar and things like that, and I did sort of dig my heels in and tried really hard not to learn it. But my interest in being able to communicate with new people and people from around the world really overcame my my headstrongness, and I did learn the language and moved on to college, and immediately knew as I got into college that I wanted to be a teacher. It was just a question of what did I want to teach? You know, what subject? Oh, I liked English, and I liked gym class. I liked gym class a lot. It's like I could do one of those things, but I knew I was going to continue French, and I knew I wanted to wholeheartedly continue French throughout my college experience, at least as a minor. And one day it just kind of clicked. Like, I don't think I care. Not that I don't care, but I don't think I'm nearly as interested in those subjects as I am in French, in languages in general. And I very quickly switched my mindset from minor in French to major in French, and that was it. I never I never looked back. I never had a moment of thinking, oh, maybe I should have picked science. No, I really thoroughly enjoyed languages and wanted to be able to share that with other people.
French was the first language that I studied in those days. It was on TV, and I believe her name was Madame Slack, I guess. And I really enjoyed it. And the teachers would tell my mother that I had a very authentic accent. And truthfully, even though one of my languages is Spanish, and when I say one of my languages, my certified languages, I probably could teach a French 1 class, but I truthfully believe my French accent is better than my Spanish accent. And that is due to the fact that I probably heard French spoken from a native, and I'm not, beyond the grammar and things that you have to learn even at the college level. I'm not sure I had any native speakers in conversation classes. So first language I studied was Latin. Then we had a choice, and I did take French. And then I studied Spanish in college and studied in Italy, so picked up Italian. But obviously, if you're a language person, then everything about anything that's different appeals to you, and it's almost not insatiable, but it's attractive, and it's the culture, the people, the food, the music, everything, the topography of the countries, all of it, sports. So you just want to eat it all up. You just want to. Now, Kristen has an interesting piece in her background. I'm not sure that she spent, was it a year or a semester in Ghana?
2 weeks.
Oh, 2 weeks. Okay.
It was only 2 weeks. It was not very long.
Okay. Now, Ghana is not French speaking.
Unfortunately, no.
And how did you end up there? And tell us about that.
So going to Ghana was a faculty-led, it wasn't a abroad program. It was a faculty-led abroad program over our winter break. So I went over to Ghana with a group. I believe there were about 25 of us in all, 2 faculty members, including the president of my college, and another, I think she worked in admissions, someone in admissions. And so there were 23 of us students that went over to Ghana to do not only some sightseeing and some cultural work, but also we worked in schools. We were split into groups of 2 or 3. And in our groups every morning, we would get into a taxi that would take us to school every day. And we would go to high schools in Ghana. We were in a coastal village called Sekondi, and it's a fishing village. And we would be taken to schools in the nearby area that were anywhere from 5 minutes from where we were staying to 35 minutes from where we were staying. And we went to a school every single day to teach kids, to teach one particular class about business and entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship in Ghana is, being an entrepreneur is one of the main job titles. We had students list off how many entrepreneurs they had in their family. And many. Everyone had at least 3 people in their family. So owning your own business there was a big part of being able to make money and make a life for yourself. So we were helping these students become entrepreneurs, working on projects that would help their communities to, in some way, shape, or form. They were making some sort of a product like garbage cans, or some of them made bug spray, things like that. One group made a bicycle out of recycled goods. And I mean, they made these things. And it was so incredible to get to go over there and help them really put all the pieces together and get comfortable with that, with the idea of doing all these things on their own. But it was one of my first teaching experiences, and it was completely out of my league, completely out of my realm. I am not a business person. I took a crash course. We took a crash course with our president before going over to Ghana to learn how to teach business. And we went over, and I really wish I could have been able to speak some French. Every other country in the surrounding area speaks French. But I was able to learn some of the native languages there. Some of the, there's a bunch, depending on which area we went to, people were speaking different languages that were similar, but slightly different. And I was learning from my students. So I would teach them some things, and then afterwards they would teach me and my co-teacher the language. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
It sounds something like what Dr. Yunus does in Bangladesh with Banker of the Poor. He will give, especially to women, he will give $25 seed money to help them start a business, a small business. And it sounds like what you did is very, very similar. Yes. That only adds to your background and broadens your experience in a different country, in a whole different world. So you can bring all that to, your teaching as well. So tell us how you have grade 8 French classes then, am I correct?
Yes.
Tell us what those are like and what kinds of things you're doing.
So those are, first of all, they're very fun. I have some wonderful kids this year who, despite the, I'm going to say trepidation and the awkwardness of Zoom calls, and they're trying to get used to that. I have some wonderful kids who are really like gung-ho about learning language, and really just sort of jumped in feet first, and have been working really, really hard to improve their French speaking skills. So I'm super lucky this year. Types of things that we're learning so far. We started a quick lesson on cognates, which are words that are similar French to English. So really, we looked at the rules for cognates that would make it a lot easier for students to be able to identify vocabulary in the target language, so that when they are trying to communicate, they can remember these rules that we've learned and say, oh, I know that word in English. Oh, it ends this way. Oh, I think that's a cognate. Okay, let me put this ending on it. Now it's a French word. And that was a way that I wanted to try to expand their vocabulary really quickly. It's something that we're going to be practicing throughout the year, getting them more comfortable with, so that they don't have to keep going back to a sheet to look at, oh, what's the ending for this? They just sort of know it, and it'll come out more naturally.
Good.
After that, we've jumped into a unit on portraits, and we're learning about different types of portraits. We're looking at a whole bunch of art. We've gone on a mock trip to the MFA in Boston by perusing the collections site on their website and looking through the artwork that they have posted there. So just trying to make the most of these different resources that we have.
Great, that's great. Well, I would like to thank Dan and Kristen for taking the time today to be with us and explain backgrounds and experiences. And by listening to them, you can really tell that a passionate and knowledgeable teacher makes all the difference in the world to students. And the students in grade 7 and grade 8 French at Lawrence are extremely lucky to have both of them teaching. So again, thank you very much. And Ryan knows my sign off is that's it for this edition of Ciao Falmouth.